We have top teams coming back from their buys, but we have 4 more teams on bye this week. We're going to go through, we're going to dive into the wide receiver carousel and try to figure out who should be starting this week. Tier 1, not going to waste your time. Tyreek Hill, he's averaging 25 points per game. Nobody comes close. Let's go down to Tier 2. Now, this may be a little bit more controversial. We will have Jamar Chase here. Now, Chase will have a very tough matchup going up against Baltimore on Thursday. You actually have a 21.5 point implied team total for this Cincinnati Bengals offense. And if you look at the passing volume here, I mean, Joe Burrow's only at 259.5 passing yards over there on Underdog for his higher lower. I mean, ultimately, if I'm looking at Chase, though, he should be closer to 100%, and we're most likely not going to see T. Higgins in this game. So if you have no Higgins and Chase is 100%, I have a very hard time ranking anybody outside of Tyreek Hill ahead of him. Now, A.J. Brown will be our next guy. With A.J. Brown, I want to say, okay, shootout game here, right? You're going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, 2 of the best offenses in the NFL, yada, yada, yada. My hesitation here is ultimately you are looking at a 21.5 point implied team total. This is actually a pretty damn good Kansas City Chiefs defense this season. Vegas sportsbooks are telling us that the Eagles may have a difficult time moving the ball down the field, at least compared to what we're used to. They're going to be a little more hesitant. Now, we're going to have CeeDee Lamb at 4 with Lamb. Beautiful spot going up against the Carolina Panthers, currently at 84.5 receiving yards on Underdog Fantasy. I mean, right now, obviously, you have the Dallas Cowboys as massive favorites. They're most likely going to look to run the ball in the second half, but CeeDee Lamb has had 3 straight games with 10 or more receptions and 3 straight games with 150 more receiving yards. Now, Stephon Diggs will be our next guy at 5. We'll be very brief with Diggs. Actually, with him going up against the Jets, we're going to move him down to 7. But I'm recording this right before the Bills game. So if Diggs goes out there and drops 40 points, we will reevaluate. Instead, we will have Keenan Allen and Amon-Ra St. Brown ahead of him. I mean, Keenan, super safe projection as a top 5 wide receiver every single week. You have the elite quarterback play. And at the same time, you have no Mike Williams, no Joshua Palmer. So there's no target competition at all. With Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, actually, this Detroit Lions offense has the highest implied team total of any team in the NFL this week at 28.5 total points. Now, with that being said, a lot of it's going to be the Montgomery, the Jahmyr Gibbs show. They're going up against Chicago. Amon-Ra St. Brown has 80.5 total yards for his higher lower than on Underdog. Team probably doesn't have to throw the ball in the second half. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we are going to go Justin Jefferson at 8. I am not certain that Jefferson will be playing this week. This will be something that we need to continue to monitor, but Jefferson did get in multiple limited practices this past week, and we were told that, you know what, if Cousins was playing, if this team had Super Bowl aspirations, maybe he would have rushed himself back. I think he will be playing against the Denver Broncos in Week 11. I will be starting him. We're going to be a little more hesitant with how we rank him, of course, with his first week back in. Now, Cooper Kupp will be that next guy at 9. Now, I understand Kupp's been very disappointing, right? If you look at the past 2 weeks that Kupp has played, yeah, he really has not done anything, but that was with the Matthew Stafford injury. I mean, we're operating under the assumption that Matthew Stafford will be good to go this week, and you do have an applied team total of about 22.5 points for this Rams offense. We'll go Davante Adams at 10 with Davante Adams. Going to be trailing in a big-time way going up against the Miami Dolphins. I think everybody is expecting that. But you are seeing him just get peppered with targets in this offense, which is what we are used to. And then we are going to be pretty aggressive with how we rank Puka here. We're going to be putting Puka at 11. Puka's actually averaged more points per game than Davante Adams, than Cooper Kupp. And he really should be considered up there like wide receiver 9 if you're just looking at his points per game. Disappointing past few weeks, but that's under the umbrella of a Matthew Stafford injury. With Stafford back in, I think you're way less concerned. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Devonta Smith at 12. Going back to what we were talking about previously, this is not necessarily a game where we can say, oh my gosh, highest scoring game, yada, yada, yada. No, you only have it at 21.5 point implied team total. I will say with Smith, however, I'm a little bit more excited with the Dallas Goedert injury, leading to more targets being available for him in Philadelphia. Jalen Waddle will be that next guy at 13. Waddle should be fully healthy coming out of the bye week. Going up against the Raiders, you don't necessarily have to throw the ball if you don't want to, if you're Miami, but obviously one of the most dynamic offenses in the NFL. We'll go Garrett Wilson at 14 against Buffalo. Don't love the matchup. Garrett Wilson is just getting peppered with targets though, right? Doesn't matter how bad Zach Wilson is. Garrett Wilson is still going to be the must-start wide receiver every single week just based off target volume, target volume, target volume. And then Adam Thielen in here at 15. I think you can make an argument to actually have Adam Thielen higher than this. Adam Thielen has averaged about 18.5 fantasy points per game, which is higher than Wilson, higher than Waddle, higher than Smith, higher than Puka, blah, 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 blah. You have an implied team total fewer than 16 points. It is a brutal matchup going up against this Dallas Cowboys defense. So based off how bad the offense is, combined with how bad the matchup is, that's why we are going to have Adam Thielen down here at 15, even though he has been much better than this so far this season. Now, speaking of someone who's been much better than this so far this season, we'll have Mike Evans down at 16, obviously coming off a monstrous performance, but he is going to be going up against the 49ers here. The 49ers just completely shut down this Jacksonville Jaguars team. And at the same time, you are looking at Chris Godwin most likely being 100% in this game, which he was not in previously. I mean, right now you have an applied team total of 15% going up against San Fran. If you're looking over at Underdog, right now you have Mike Evans at 57.5 receiving yards, which is right in line with some of these other wide receivers you're going to find in this tier. And of course, if you think Mason, you're an idiot, you're way too low on Evans, he's clearly going to have more than 57.5 receiving yards. Feel free to go take that higher than on Underdog Fantasy. I want it because I'm scared of the 49ers defense. But if you were wanting to, you can find that link in the description. Find it in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and a special Joe Burrow pick'em, more than less than half a total yard for this Thursday. Now let's move over to 17, where we are going to have DK Metcalf. With Metcalf only averaging about 12 points per game so far this year, I don't mind the matchup at all going up against the Rams. However, I mean, if you are looking at this Rams defense, we have seen them allow some pretty big games to opposing wide receivers so far this season. And Metcalf is consistently seeing target volume, and obviously he is a big play receiver at the same time. Brandon Ayuk will be that next guy. Ayuk's been much better than DK Metcalf so far this season, but we'll throw Deebo Samuel in alongside him. My issue with Ayuk is, okay, well, now we have a fully healthy CMC. We have a fully healthy Deebo Samuel. We have a fully healthy George Kittle. So there are just so many weapons in this offense. A little bit tougher to go out there and say that Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk are both top 12 wide receivers, right? Now, if you are looking at the pick'ems, you have Ayuk at 58.5 receiving yards in comparison to Mike Evans at 57.5. They are neck and neck, but maybe if you want to use that as a tiebreaker, you go Ayuk over Evans. Tank Dell will be our next wide receiver at 20. You have a 26-point implied team total for this Houston Texans offense going up against Arizona. With Tank Dell, I feel like maybe this is too low, but then you go and look at the Underdog pick'ems here. And Tank Dell currently is sitting at 49.5 receiving yards, significantly lower than every other player in this range. So I'm going to say, you know what? CJ Stroud's been so damn good. The matchup's great. I am willing to go out of our way, and I'm willing to say that the Underdog pick'ems are wrong. I'll go with more than 49.5 receiving yards with Tank Dell, back-to-back weeks with crazy target volume, and 2 weeks ago, obviously, you had a healthy Nico Collins. Now, DJ Moore will be that next guy, 21, a very low implied team total, 18.5 points. Not sure if Justin Fields will be playing. Of course, make sure you're subscribed. We're going to go ahead and we will keep you updated later in the week with Justin Fields news. And maybe if Fields is available and looks to be 100%, we can jump DJ Moore into the tier above. Christian Kirk will be the next guy, 22. You had a horrendous game overall, of course, from this Jacksonville Jaguars offense. But with that being said, was it really too much of a negative thing for Kirk? No, because while the offense was horrible, you did yet again get confirmation that Calvin Ridley is going to give you absolutely nothing. Not only are you going to get nothing from Calvin Ridley, but at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, Christian Kirk is dominating in targets. Now, Amari Cooper will be our next wide receiver, 23. Toughish matchup here going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You have an applied team total of about 20.25 points, which is lower than what we have with someone like the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? So we're going to be a little hesitant with Amari, but nonetheless, still start him, of course. And then Nico Collins will be our next wide receiver at 24. If you look at the target volume that we had from Nico Collins before his injury, he still was only averaging about 5 targets per game. So, I mean, I would be willing to say, well, you know what? We've seen a large enough sample now where Tank Dell is going out there dominating the target share, where Tank Dell should be the wide receiver, but both guys our top 24 wide receivers with how damn good CJ Stroud's been. Like CJ Stroud, they have a 249.5 passing yards against Arizona. I wouldn't mind going to more than 249. Now, Terry McLaurin will be our next wide receiver at 25. McLaurin kind of in this ambiguous range, right? Averaging about 12.9 points per game. You have Washington favored by about 10.5 points in this contest, which is interesting, right? Because it'll be one of the very few times that we actually get to see Washington dominate the game, and maybe they go out there and maybe they run the ball in the second half. We just simply don't know at this point. Then Hollywood Brown will be our next wide receiver at 26. While I understand, yes, Hollywood, really bad this past week. Realistically speaking, Kyler Murray coming into this offense is a good thing for everybody involved. This Arizona Cardinals offense should be much better going forward. If you look at the splits with and without Kyler Murray for Hollywood Brown's career, over the past 2 seasons, he has been dramatically better in games where Kyler Murray plays in. He was about a foot or two away of actually having that long receiving touchdown this past week. You have an applied team total of about 22 points for Arizona, so I don't think you need to be too concerned. And Hollywood Brown is for sure still someone that you can't start. Now, Tyler Lockett will be our next wide receiver. Tyler Lockett averaging about 12.3 points per game. Right there in line with DK Metcalf, right there in line with a lot of these other wide receivers. I mean, I keep on wanting to say, oh, okay, well, just wait. If you wait, we're eventually going to have Jackson Smith-Njigba turning it up and JSN seeing more and more targets. That just simply has not happened so far this year. I mean, Tyler Lockett does look like he is, I don't want to say a super safe option, but a pretty safe option here. And then DeAndre Hopkins will be a wide receiver that obviously the primary concern is just the offense that he is playing in. Now, in the case of DeAndre Hopkins, I think that it can be a little bit better going forward than at least it was this past week, right? Because whether it's Ryan Tannehill, whether it's Will Levis, we have seen throughout this entire season pretty much that the Tennessee Titans are going to be one of the weird teams where they're hot, cold, hot, cold, hot. It's very hard to know what we're going to expect in Tennessee. DeAndre Hopkins is clearly the alpha target. He had 3 touchdowns just a few weeks back. I mean, all these wide receivers from about, I want to say 16 to 32 are extremely close. Deontay Johnson will be our next guy. Very close right now. In the case of Kenny Pickett's been very bad. I mean, Kenny Pickett has had 1 game in his NFL career with more than 1 passing touchdown. Kenny Pickett has something like 6 passing touchdowns on the entire season. This is one of the worst passing offenses in the NFL. This is one of the worst matchups in the NFL going up against the Cleveland Browns. You have an applied team total of about 16.5 points here for Deontay Johnson. So even though Deontay has been dominant with target volume, I do want to be a little bit hesitant. And then we'll go Jacoby Myers at 30. With Myers, we've seen the drop with his overall target share in this offense. Now, I don't necessarily know if that's going to be super predictive going forward. Obviously, we're looking at a very small sample with this new quarterback, with this new coaching staff. I think we take a step back and we say, oh, okay, well, at the end of the day, Jacoby Myers is a wide receiver that has averaged about 15 points per game. You're going up against the Dolphins. You're probably going to have to throw the ball quite often. So, yeah, I think you can still go through and start Myers. Chris Godwin will be that next guy at 31. If you're looking at my rest of season rankings, I will have Godwin significantly higher than this. However, the issue that you have with Chris Godwin, going back to the same thing that we were talking about with Mike Evans, and to be honest with you, Mike Evans should probably be a little bit lower in these rankings for this reason, is you have that 15-point implied team total going up against arguably the best defense in the NFL. Not only are you going up against the best defense in the NFL, but you are flying from Tampa to San Fran. Let's look up how long is that flight. I mean, that's pretty much as cross-country as you can get here. It's not too bad. You got a little bit over a 6-hour flight, but still, nonetheless, got a team traveling cross-country to participate in one of the toughest matchups you could possibly ask for. Now, our next guy will be Jordan Addison. With Jordan Addison, he'll be significantly higher in these rankings if Justin Jefferson does not play. But my issue is we're projecting this out to be a game where you have Justin Jefferson. Not only do you have Justin Jefferson, but at the same time, you have TJ Hawkinson seeing a considerable amount of work. So you have Hawkinson seeing that work. probably need to be a little bit pessimistic here that Addison can go out there and dominate as the third option in a Joshua Dobbs offense, even if I do like Dobbs. Now, our next guy will be Tyler Boyd. With Tyler Boyd, obviously phenomenal performance this past week. I was worried because the first week we had no T. Higgins in this offense. I mean, Tyler Boyd kind of split the wide receiver 2 role here, but that's not what we saw in week 10. It looks like we're going to have no T. Higgins. My issue is it's still Tyler Boyd, not necessarily a great wide receiver. And if he did make big plays last week, and it is a brutal matchup going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Jamar Chase should be closer to 100%. I think Chase dominates with targets. You can still start Boyd if you need to. I'm just not super excited about it. And then Zay Flowers will be our next wide receiver at 34. With Flowers, he continues to get target volume, but he's only averaging 11 points per game this season, right? Rashee Rice, another rookie wide receiver we'll have in here. With Rice, as we've discussed, the issue is he can be the wide receiver 1 on paper for the Kansas City Chiefs. But if they're deciding to split this wide receiver room into a million different pieces, even if you're the wide receiver 1, if all these slices are cut so small, you don't know if you're going to have enough to eat. Calvin Ridley will be the next guy at 30. We'll go Calvin Ridley, Gabe Davis, JSN as whatever, guys. I mean, with Gabe Davis, like I said, recording this right before the Jets game, I don't know ultimately what he is going to do. But, I mean, maybe these are players with upside, just super hard to trust starting them anytime soon. But I think that's all I have for y'all with this video. If you enjoyed it, please go down there, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And of course, if you wanted to check out any of those pick'ems over on Underdog Fantasy, you can find that link in the live chat, in the description, in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and that Joe Burrow special pick'em more than less than half a total yards. Make sure you take advantage of that. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you and really hope I get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.